Welcome to Sociology of the Sweet Science, Season 2, Episode 3. Today we're sitting down with a true steward of boxing tradition, John Iceman Scully, a former world title challenger, elite trainer, and beloved historian of the sport. Scully is one of the few voices in boxing who've seen it all, from the golden era of the 80s to the modern day championship scene. He's fought world champions, trained some of the best fighters alive, and worked tirelessly to preserve the legacy of boxing's past. This conversation isn't about boxing, it's about memory, character, community, and survival in one of the world's most brutal and beautiful sports. I want to start off by asking, you met both Muhammad Ali and Willie Pep on the same day back in 1983 when you were just a teenager. Can you walk us through how that happened, what it meant to you, and how it helped define your identity in the sport?
Well, what happened was when I was a kid, before that, I was 15 when I met them that day. Uh, and I used to read about them because my father had their books, both of their autobiographies. So those were actually two of the very first books I ever read. And what happened was, Willie's from Hartford, where I'm from. So he lived, who was friends with Ali, and he had a farm museum in Bloomfield, Connecticut, which is the next town over. And he got Muhammad Ali to come in 1983. That was in May or June of '83, and Willie came in, and a bunch of people were there, and I met them both that day, and it was kind of it was amazing to meet Ali. But when I look back on it, it was kind of weird because he was really slow that day. I think looking back on it, he was probably in the beginning stages of the Parkinson's, and they were probably doing clinical trials on him, like trying out different medications. And whatever he was on at that time, it made him really slow. He looked almost like a mummy. And he didn't look good that day at all. Like he was, and that was less than 2 years after he fought Trevor Berbick. Um, he actually looked better years later, which is weird. But yeah, that was my first time. I met him several times, but that was my first time meeting him.
Now, you just mentioned growing up in Connecticut. You grew up in Hartford, right?
Well, actually, Windsor, which is the next town over.
Oh, okay. So what first drew you to boxing growing up in Connecticut? Were there key gyms, mentors, or local legends that shaped your early ambitions?
Well, I can tell you that my mother and father got divorced when I was like 4. So he moved to an apartment not too far from where we live. So on the weekends, I would stay with him, and he was a big boxing fan. So he had books on boxing that I would read, and he also watched all the fights every weekend. So I remember watching Sugar Ray Leonard against Andy Price. So that was like 1978. I remember watching Leon Spinks and Ali. So I was exposed to it since I was a young kid, and I eventually started my own boxing league in my with my friends in 1980, and I actually had 9 fights with kids in my. We would fight like on the back porch and in the yard, in a garage, and so that's kind of where I developed a love for boxing.
Your amateur career was incredibly decorated. What moments from that chapter stand out uh, to this day for you?
Um, well, I can say this honestly. The happiest moment of my life, if I could pinpoint the happiest moment of my life, it was June 4, 1988, when I beat Darren Allen, who was a world champion at the time. When I beat Darren Allen to win the Eastern Olympic trials, to qualify for the Olympic trials, Darren was a superstar in amateur boxing. He was like, the Roy Jones of amateur boxing. He was that level. And I always dreamed of fighting him and beating him was probably the happy. It was the happiest moment of my life. And people say, "Oh, well, wasn't it when your daughter was born or you got married?" And I said, "Listen, it's different because I knew those things were going to happen. I was prepared for them. I didn't know I beat Darren until they said it. So when they said it, that moment was happy, like super. Can't even describe it."
I can only imagine. And going back to your amateur career, I wanted to ask, since you're a trainer yourself now, what did the amateur circuit look and feel like in the 80s compared to how it's run today?
It's a different world today, the way they do it. Everybody likes to say, oh well, in my day they did this, and my day was better, but it was. I mean,
Mhm.
my day, there was the Golden Gloves. Our local Golden Gloves was 6 weeks, 6 week tournament, and there would be 35 fights a night for 6 weeks, and you could fight 4 or 5 of those weeks to win the title. My first year, this is local Golden Gloves. My first year, there was 16 guys in my weight class. Uh, Nowadays, the tournament's like 3 weeks, and there might be two guys in the weight class. It's just the competition level. There's good fighters, but there's not nearly as many of them. Uh, I was lucky. Honestly, if I started boxing today, I probably wouldn't stick with it because there's no competition like there was. And I give an example. This will perfectly illustrate it. Today, August 2025. If I was boxing today at 165 pounds as an amateur, meaning anybody from 147 to 175, I could spar with them, right? Back in the mid 80s, I could spar with, just off the top of my head, Marlon Starling, Troy Wortham, Muhammad Shabazz, Michael Bell, Nick Mejia, Robert Murray, Miguel Torres, Brian Sims, Marcus Jackson, Tyrone Blues, Stefan. I'm not gonna name a million guys, right? Today, there's only one light heavyweight in Hartford, and he's a pro, Richie Rivera. He's like 35 years old. He's the only guy, and he hasn't fought much lately. So the level of competition is just not there. When I walked in the gym for the first time, there was so many fighters in the gym, and there was guys who I knew from TV and from the newspaper, reading about them. So I'm in the gym and I'm 14 years old, and I'm looking across the gym, and I'm saying, man, that's Milton Leaks over there. That's Jeffrey Leak right there. That's Troy Wortham. We don't have that today. It's a different world. We don't have that.
Absolutely. And on the subject of great light heavyweights, around that same time when you were meeting Willie Pep and Muhammad Ali, I read that you were in correspondence with Archie Moore. What kind of advice did he give you, and what did it feel like to have that connection so early on in your career?
Archie Moore told me, when I get someone in a clinch, and scream in their ear as loud as I can, and because that will discombobulate them. And I never did it. I never did that one. But I met him through the mail originally. I wrote him a letter. I wrote a whole bunch of guys letters, and only three people wrote me back. I can tell you, it was Artie Levine, Tommy Hearns, and Archie Moore. But the difference was the other two sent me a picture and a signed picture, which was nice. But Archie wrote me an actual letter. So I was like, well, he wrote me a letter, so I'm going to write him back. So I wrote him back. We end up writing each other for 15 years until he died in 1998.
Wow. Wow. Did you ever have the privilege of meeting him?
Yeah, yeah. No, if you go to YouTube, there's a video of him and I meeting. He I met him like at least twice, I think three times, but at least twice. and but one of them is on YouTube. He was on stage at a dinner, and I was 8-0 because I remember he said it in the speech. He called me up to the dais, and he was talking about me and how we became friends. And you can see me, and I look super young. I think I was 21 at the time, but I look like I'm about 15. And I come up and we hug each other, and you know, wait, hold on one second. I got to just see what this guy wants. Hold on.
No
I thought
worries.
you were another person. Oh, no, I'm good. All right. Gotcha. Anyway, so we became friends all the way until he passed away, and I have 48 letters, handwritten letters from him in my house.
Incredible, incredible. I mean, um, I won nine posters off of you in your charity auction, including that great Roy Jones Jr. Dare poster. It seems like you have quite the collection of memorabilia in your
Oh
apartment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What
Well,
other
the thing
items?
is, here's the thing. Well, let me tell you, I'm not even a collector. I have the stuff, so I keep it. I'm not a. I have access to a lot of people, and I could get a lot of great stuff for myself. But I've never been an autograph collector myself. The only autographs I've ever gotten was Muhammad Ali, Bernard Taylor, Willie Pep, and Frankie Randall. Those are the only ones I thought to get. Um, but I do have a lot of cool stuff. I have a lot of signed gloves and posters, and I mean, just I can't even think of it all. But really, really, and a lot of stuff. Some of the people's boxing fans on the internet have mailed me stuff to auction off to help raise money for fighters. So I've gotten a lot of good stuff just from friends through the mail.
Exactly, and that's how I got my collection from you, and still need to get them framed, and I can't wait to put them up in my apartment. But I want to switch
Yeah.
into your pro career. In 1995, you fought Michael Nunn, a former champion known for his speed and southpaw craft. It was a controversial decision. What do you remember most about that night, both physically and mentally?
Um, I remember one time we were in a clinch, and I don't know why, but somehow just on the spur of the moment, I reached underneath. He was like, he had his head in front of me, and I reached under, and between like the glove, my thumb and my forefinger, there's a little space, and somehow I got a hold of his lip, and I tried to pull his lip off, and I was pulling on it, and I remember he called me a mother effer, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's crazy. Like Michael Nunn just called me a mother effer. Like I used to watch this guy on TV, and I thought that was, I caught myself. I thought it was pretty cool. But I remember catching him with some good shots, and I think I really caught him one good time with a right hand. It's actually on YouTube. Uh, that one I think definitely caught his attention. Um, I remember when the fight was over, I didn't know who was going to get it. I thought I could get it. I thought I might be about to win, or maybe it's going to be a draw. It was that kind of fight where I wasn't sure. I certainly didn't think like, wow, he beat me, or I didn't think, wow, I beat him. But I thought both one of us is going to get a close decision. That was my thought process.
Yeah, I remember just rewatching the fight leading up to an interview. The commentator Al Bernstein noted that it was a turning point, and I believe you said even after the Nun fight that it was a rebirth. What exactly was reborn in you that night?
Well, just like you go through your career, and like that fight. Even though I didn't get the decision, to this day, it feels like a win. I felt like I won, and I get like everybody, any boxing fan. If I'm at a fight in Las Vegas and I meet a boxing fan and he knows me, that's the fight they're gonna bring up. Like they always bring that fight up. So I got a lot of respect and credit, for the performance. And so sometimes a loss isn't necessarily a loss. Like a loss, like when Lou Duval fought Roy Jones and he dropped Roy, and it was a tough fight and he lost a decision. There's no shame at all, especially with who Roy Jones was. But so Lou Duval, I'm sure Lou, part of him, it feels almost the same as if he had won a fight. And so I get that vibe when with the Nunn situation.
Completely, yeah. There's that idea of a moral victory. Like if we look at Pacquiao two weeks ago, he's 46-year-old fighting a 29-year-old. In my opinion, he won 7-5, but he drew against Barrios, the 29-year-old. You know, any way you look at it, that's a victory for Pacquiao, one way or another. I mean, for a
Right,
championship belt at
100%.
age 46, yeah. I
Listen,
would,
there's in my day. Let me say this. In my day, there was no way a 46-year-old guy is going the distance with
Mhm.
one of these kids, let alone give them a close, tough fight. So, Pacquiao, he's a special fighter for sure.
Yeah. It, an eight division world champ still fighting for a WBC championship belt against a 29-year-old after being inducted into the Hall of Fame. We might never see another fighter in our lives like Manny Pacquiao. But
Right.
I wanted to also ask you about, your fight with Henry Mask in Germany. That was for
Right.
the IBF light heavyweight world title. And I wanted to ask, what was the atmosphere of fighting in Germany like compared to America?
It was different. Everything was different. And overseas and everywhere, like in Australia and everywhere, it's different. They treat it different. I'll give you an example. When I got off the plane, a reporter was waiting for me at the airport, and the promoter had sent a van, like an SUV, to pick me up. And on the side of the van, and they had a whole fleet of them, was John Scully versus Henry Mosky. Our names were on the truck. And I just saw that in Saudi Arabia recently with Artur, same type of thing. They don't do that here. um, you know, I was in the newspaper every day, every day, every day. Bild, that's like the USA Today of Germany. And I was in the paper every day. Sometimes my picture would be on the front pages of sports. Um, it's just a different vibe. You walk in, I went to the arena, and when I walked out of the dressing room, going to the ring, there was 14,000 people there, but it looked like a million. Like when I came out, all I saw was endless. I said, man, it doesn't end. There's just people everywhere. And it was different. It was definitely different.
I felt the same thing 2 weeks ago. I was at Usyk de Bois, and when everyone walks out of Wembley, all 95,000 people just trying to get on in the underground, as someone who lives in New York, leaving a fight at the Garden, that's only 20,000. There's nothing like leaving a stadium fight for a prize fight. There is
Yeah.
nothing like it.
Right. Right.
And yeah, I wanted to ask you about Lamar Parks. You described him as the hardest puncher you ever faced. Can you describe what it feels like to be hit by someone like that?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, pound for pound, Lamar was probably number one. The funny thing is, I fought Lamar twice as an amateur. I won the decision both times, and I sparred him twice as a pro. And I just remember thinking, it feels like he has a little bowling ball. It's like picture if you took a bowling ball and put it in a sock and then swung it around and you got hit with it. That's what I felt like. That's what it felt like. I think I probably beat him because he hit so hard. Like he put me on high alert right away, and I stepped my game up. Like that's one time I can say I felt it. I felt that threat, and I stepped it up. I had to really fight a great fight to beat him. And when we sparred, it was the type of thing where we were at Times Square Gym in New York City, which is amazing gym at the time. And I remember like Sal Manby was there that day, and Jimmy Glenn was there, and Luis Santana was there. And I remember they gave us a standing ovation. Everybody was clapping when we were done sparring. And I didn't really know because we did 8 rounds, and I didn't really know. I never seen us, us clapping for a sparring. And they told me, they go, man, nobody goes 8 rounds in the gym with Lamar Parks. Like, you're the first one we seen do that. And I came back either the next day or 2 days later, and we did it again. Uh, it was really high level, and I respect Lamar. It was amazing. He's an amazing fighter. His career was cut short. We didn't get to see the best of him, but he was a really really good boxer. Even on top of the power, he's actually, everybody talks about the check hook and they think of Floyd Mayweather, but I got hit with the check hook by Lamar Parks 10 years before anybody even heard of it from Floyd Mayweather. Roy Jones had the check hook. I assume Lamar got it from him, and Lamar and Roy both, had amazing check hooks way before Floyd Mayweather ever did.
Did Roger Mayweather employ the check hook, or is that just Floyd?
I don't remember Roger doing that so much. I know it never, like, when Roy did it, he did it to me, and I didn't know it as the check hook. I just knew it as Roy's left hook.
Hmm.
But later on, when they described it as the check hook, because Floyd was doing, I said, man, Roy's been doing that for 15 years. What are you talking about? So, yeah.
Hmm. Well, from what you just told me, it sounds like your training camps were pretty intense. What was your mindset like during them, and what routines or mental techniques helped you stay locked in?
Oh, I guess a lot of it would depend on the opponent, right? Like when I fought Michael Nunn, I was watching tapes of some of his knockouts, when he knocked out Sambu Kalimbe and Curtis Parker, and I'm like, man, I don't want to get caught with these shots, over and over and over, you know what I mean? And so one thing I trained myself to take a punch, like, and I've always believed this, and I believe it's a fact. You can Part of taking a punch is mental, and if you make up your mind that you're going to take a better punch, you will, 100%. And every fighter, they may not realize it, but every fighter knows they've sparred or fought somebody, and in the first round they got caught and they were a little shook up. But then later on, they got caught with better punches from the same guy, and nothing happened. And that's because their mind flipped, and they implemented some type of defense mechanism. Something kicked in, and they took a better punch. So I went into that fight adamant that he's not going to hurt me. I felt like a 500-pound rock, and I can honestly say I was never ever bothered by anything physically in the fight ever.
Were there ever fights in your career you took knowing you weren't 100% but still went through with that?
Too many. And the thing is, it's a funny thing. Well, I get a little deep here, right? I'll tell you where this came from and how it backfired on me. When I was a kid, me and my brother used to fight. He was 5 years older than me. And the fact is, like, we fought, but everybody says, "Oh, brothers fight," but we fought on a different level. Like, and there was times when I hated my brother. I hated him, and it was a thing where it was not joking. It was serious all the time. And as a kid, I made up my mind. I knew I couldn't overpower him yet, so I made up my mind. I'm never going to quit. I knew he wanted me to quit, so I would never quit. I would never give him the satisfaction, and he would always give up first. So when I had fights where I knew I wasn't ready, I didn't want to not fight because I didn't want anybody to think they got over on me. So as a result, I went into fights I wasn't ready for. But the biggest, I mean, Brett Lally, I wasn't ready for. Tony Thornton, I wasn't ready for. Uh, Tim Little's I wasn't ready for, but I didn't realize it until I actually got there. Uh, and Drake Dadsey, there's nowhere on earth I should have been. I mean, I should have been anywhere on earth other than a boxing ring. Um, but I went through with it because I didn't want people to think I was afraid. And looking back, that was probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life. And as a fighter, I don't want people to think I was afraid. As a trainer, I know we're not afraid, but we have to be ready. We have to be smart. That's why you need a trainer to pull you out, because a fighter generally is not going to pull themselves out. You know what I mean? I would never do that. And I needed someone to say, hey, you're not ready for this. You can't do this. And I didn't have that. So I went through with it.
So, one of the lesser known dangers in boxing is the extreme weight cutting. And I think that's been something that's being talked about at least more in the last few years than it has been in previous decades. But with that being said, how would you comment on the process of cutting weight to make, say, 175 or whatever weight class one might be fighting at?
Well, let me say, that's why I wasn't ready for Drake Dassey, because the weight cut that I had to go through was so horrific that I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I actually went into the fight saying to myself, I hate boxing. I hate this sport. I despise it. I don't even want to be a fighter. And I've never watched the fight on tape. I never will. But I remember being interviewed after the fight in the ring. I believe it was Al Bernstein. And it was such a crazy thing. And they were like, man, what happened out there? And I remember saying, listen, I was mad. And I said, look, I quit. I quit. I don't want to box. I quit. They go, and I remember he said something like, well, are you saying you're retiring? And I say, no, I say I quit. I quit. I hate this sport. And I was like venting, it was all coming out of me. That was all because of the weight loss. And I was just so sick of making weight. To this day, 30 years later, I cannot sit in a sauna at a health club. I do not go in there because as soon as I walk in, it just reminds me of those days, and I just hate it so much.
No, I can only imagine the sauna-induced PTSD that
Yeah, yeah,
retired boxers must face.
yeah.
If there was one fight that you could run back, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
Um, a bunch of, but that one for sure. That one,
Mhm.
like I would,
Yeah.
if it was now, a week before the fight, I would say, listen, I'm not ready. We can't fight. Let's do it in 2 or 3 months. But even at that time, like I didn't know what I know now about how to make weight and that type of thing. Um, but I was just broken at the time. It was a really bad time. If I could do that over, because the fact is, that was the only time I was ever stopped in my career, and I didn't get stopped like knocked down or beat up or 8 counts. The referee who knew me since I was a kid, he did a bunch of my amateur fights. He stopped it because I wasn't fighting back hard. He knew something was really off with me. He told me after. He goes, "Hey, I'm sorry I had to stop it, but I've known you since you were 16 years old. Like that wasn't you. I don't know who that was." And so, I couldn't be mad at him. Uh, but yeah, if I could do that one over, I would definitely do it over.
Now, before we go into your work as a trainer, I just want to end with what was your proudest win as a professional, and what did it mean to you at the time?
Uh, but there was a few. When I beat Art Bayless, which was a televised fight, it was a happy thing because number one, he had fought in like the year before in the fight of the year on USA Tuesday Night Fights with Egerton Marcus. I remember it was just like a Gaddy Ward type of fight, and it was they called it the fight of the year for that network. But I also remember the first time we got offered the fight. my trainer vetoed it. He didn't want to fight Art Bayless. And I just remember thinking, like, man, like, why? Like, you know, I can't beat him. Like, he's too big. Like, he hits too hard. He was known as a big puncher. And I was like, man, I was a little thrown off by it. So when the fight came around the second time, it kept me awake because this is the guy my trainer didn't want me to fight about a year ago. So he's not telling me something, but there's something he knows that I need to look out for. So I really got ready. That was one of the few fights I could say training went really well. I was really prepared, and I was on my game that night. So I really liked that one. And there was another fight with Alfonso Bailey on USA Tuesday Night Fights. Who Alfonso at one time as an amateur was number one in the United States, and I looked up to Alfonso when I was an amateur. He was a little before me, so he was a kid a guy I looked up to. And when I first got offered the fight, I almost didn't want to take it because my previous televised fight I lost against Brett Lally. And I said, man, I don't want to lose two fights in a row on TV, like my first two on TV. This wouldn't be good. And, but I got myself together and focused, and it ended up being one of the best performances of my career.
Now, transitioning into your work as a trainer, you were still doing that when you were an active boxer. What inspired you to start giving back so early?
Well, I was training amateurs even when I was an amateur, like all the way back to 1986, 85. I had kids in the gym I was working with. And so it was really natural for me. So basically, when I was fighting pro, I had my team. We used to call ourselves the Five-Star Bomb Squad. It was five of us, four kids and me. And in between my own fights, I would train them and go to tournament. I mean, we went to Las Vegas, we went to Florida, we went to Kansas City, we went everywhere, Montreal, for big tournaments and regional tournaments. And, I had a good team. We won about collectively, they won about probably close to 50 championships, locally, regionally, and nationally.
You worked with fighters at the highest level, like Artur Beterbiev. What separates champions from contenders in terms of mindset?
Well, I can tell you, Arthur separates himself from everyone. Like I always talk, if you know me, I'm big on mentality. I'm always talking about mentality. And if you don't have it, you can't be a pro. I don't care how fast you are, how quick, how whatever. There's a lot of Roy Jones types of kids out there, but they don't have the Roy Jones mentality and they can't turn pro. They just can't. Arthur has a mentality that's off the charts. You never have to worry about him training and getting ready and doing what he has to do. He's the ultimate professional. And if everybody had the mentality of Artur Beterbiev, boxing would be the greatest sport on earth.
100%. I mean, prior to his Bivol fights, those knockouts that were, I believe every fight he had before Bivol was a consecutive knockout. He knocked out every opponent, and it was just absolute magic to watch him fight. And those two Bivol fights, I mean, they are very, very close. And I wanted to ask how you felt about the decision in both fight one and fight two, and if you think there will be a trilogy.
I honestly don't know about the trilogy. I haven't talked to anybody about it on the team. I'm the type of person I just wait for them to call me. I don't bother them. I don't ask. I don't have any say. So I just wait till they call me. Believe it or not, funny enough, I thought Arthur won the second fight bigger than he won the first. Like
I
being there
complete,
live.
I completely agree. As a
Right.
spectator on TV, I could
Right.
not agree more. Could not agree
There you
more.
go. I'll be completely honest. And like I say, the view from the corner is sometimes different than television, right? From the corner, if you asked me in the seventh round, what do you think? I would have said, we're winning. I think something's wrong with Bivol. He looks like he doesn't really want to engage. He doesn't really want to fight. I think we're going to stop him, you know? And then I haven't seen the fight on tape, so I don't know if you could hear me say this on television, but after the, I believe, sixth round, it looked like Arthur took a round off, which is understandable, right? But then he took another one off. And I said to him in the corner, Arthur, don't keep taking rounds off. Like we can't afford to, I said you can't let him back in the fights. You can't give him confidence. Uh, and Bivol did better towards the end than he probably should have. But when the bell rang, when the fight ended, I walked in that ring thinking we had it for sure. And I remember, I think it was Carl Moretti. I believe it was Carl Moretti was in the ring. And I said to him, I kind of nodded to him like, yeah, we got this, huh? And he said, I'm not sure. And I was honestly surprised. I was surprised that he didn't think we won. And a couple seconds later, we didn't win.
Now, transitioning from boxers to actors, I wanted to ask, is it true that you trained one of the actors for the Willie Pep biography?
Yeah, James Mario. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
I trained James to I didn't have to train him to be a fighter. I just had to train him to be Willie Pep, to have that elusiveness and I actually sparred with James, which was pretty cool. And I told him, I said, you can't play a boxer in a movie unless you spar for real at least one time. Now I didn't hit him, he's much smaller than me. But we worked and he took it very serious and I thought he did a really good job. He actually looked like Willie. He got himself the way he walked and the way he dressed and the way he moved. He did a really really good job.
No, absolutely. That's such a great story and one I definitely need to check out as a film buff. I have not seen the film, but definitely I'm going to add that to the top of my watch list. I know it's getting late, and to be honest, I've only gotten through half of our questions, so I'd love to have you back on the program. And thank you so much for coming on. I just wanted to end with for any young fighters listening out there who feel unsure, who are struggling with getting into the sport, amateur boxing, what would you recommend being the best way to implement yourself into the system of the sport?
You if you're going to go to a gym, you like here's the thing: all trainers are not the same. All coaches are not the same. Now the problem with amateur boxing in this country is I'll give you an example. If you play baseball for your high school baseball team, it stands to reason that the coach played baseball. He's got a background in baseball. Certainly in college, all the coaching staff are football guys, right? You could go to a gym and the trainer literally never fought, never was involved in boxing. He just was kind of a fan and he took a test, which is not hard, and he became a fighter. So a mother goes into a gym and she says, I'm a little what? What are your credentials? USA boxing coach. And he's got the certification on the wall. Looks awesome. Go, oh man, okay, that's great. Doesn't mean that much. It means he passed the test. Uh, you have to look further. You have to look, see who he's produced. What type of boxers has he produced? If you could talk to some of the boxers, see what they say about him, but ultimately it's who you're producing. How many Golden Glove champions do you have? How many of this? How many of that? Um, but also, like I say, mentality is everything. And a lot of people, like you have a boxing gym, right? You want to have the kids in there. You want to have amateurs, but it's not all about just having champions, right? And professionals and that type of thing. Boxing is a way to save kids. And it's almost like a club. And if they're in the club, they're not out in the street. They're not out getting in trouble. They're learning good habits. So we accept all kids, whether they have potential and talent or not. And a lot of kids are in the gym. They don't have any talent. They don't have any potential. And in reality, um, but if you're going to go, you have to take it serious. You can have fun, but you have to take it serious, and you have to try to be the best in the gym, right? You may never be the best, but you have to try to be the best. That's how you stay above water. If you just look around at everybody and everybody's better than me, and I'm just going to train, but I'm not even close to being the best in the gym, you're probably not going to ever be anywhere near the best of yourself. You have to be competitive. You can be fun, but you have to be competitive. Boxing is not a sport to do just for fun. It's a serious sport. You can have fun doing it, but it's a serious sport. You have to try to succeed. Now, there's levels of success, but whatever your level is, you have to try and reach that level. And so I push that. I don't let any kids go there and just slack off just because it's something to do. Like if you're there, we're gonna make you the best of and your best maybe 10% of somebody else, but we're only worried about you. I want to get your best.
That is the best answer you could have given me. That is an incredible way to end this, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on the program, Mr. Scully. Like I mentioned, I only got through about 35% of the questions I had written up, so I'd love to have you back on. And I wanted to end by saying, is there any fighters, trainers, gyms that you would want to promote to my audience?
Well, my gym is not my gym, but my friend's gym. The gym I'm working at, I just got done there. It's called COBA, COBA, which is Charter Oak Boxing Academy in Hartford, Connecticut, on Hope Park Highway. Uh, it's a gym for kids. I believe the age limit is 9 to 18. So if you start between those ages and then you turn 18, you can stay there, but you can't join the gym after the age of 18. But it's a phenomenal gym. We have a bunch of coaches. We have homework programs. They go on trips. We do different things together. We compete. Some of the kids, they're not ever going to compete, but they're in the gym every day. We're training and having fun, and so it's a special place. It's a different kind of gym, and anybody in the Hartford area that's interested in boxing for their kid, I would say we're the place to be.
Perfect. Well, maybe for our next interview, I can come up and interview you in person because I'm only a train right away from New York City.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on and have a great rest of your night.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. All right. Be
Thank you
good.
so much. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Okay.